We are a couple weeks away from the World Cup qualifying window that's going to determine whether or not the U.S. men's national team qualifies for the 2022 World Cup. It is a very important window, needless to say, and therefore we are picking or predicting which roster Berhalter is going to bring for this upcoming window. Now, I have a feeling it's going to rely heavily on a lot of the players that we saw in the last window with some big caveats, and those caveats are injuries. We've got some pretty big, significant injuries at some significant positions. The headline is, of course, Weston McKennie, the player who's probably playing the best out of any U.S. men's national team player heading into this window, picked up an injury, and he's not going to be available for this window. There's some other ones that are out there that we're going to talk about as we go through that are really interesting that might have a major impact on this window. But let's get right into it. What's up? My name is Sam. This is the Yank Report, the show where we talk about the U.S. men's national team. If you're into that, hit subscribe, hit the like button, do all that good stuff. Let's get started with the goalkeepers, which is unfortunately a really interesting thing to talk about because the two guys that have gotten the bulk of the minutes heading into this window, Zach Steffen and Matt Turner, are both out injured. And when it comes to Matt Turner, it's a little bit of a sticky situation. Taylor Twellman tweeted out that he'd be shocked if Matt Turner is available for the World Cup qualifying window. Matt Turner didn't start either of New England Revolution's first two MLS games, and it's looking like it's not going to happen for Matt Turner as far as this World Cup qualifying window. The other one, of course, is Zach Steffen. Zach Steffen has been the player that's been the goalkeeper when healthy, when available for the U.S. men's national team. He picked up a shoulder injury. Pep Guardiola said Zach Steffen, he's not yet returning. He's still in the gym. Had a problem with his shoulder, which is difficult for goalkeepers. We will decide the goalkeeper situation tomorrow. Tomorrow would be today, and we will find out if Zach Steffen is on the roster for Man City's next game, which is, in fact, tomorrow, depending on when you're watching this video. I know it's very confusing, but it looks like it's kind of day-to-day with Zach Steffen. I'm optimistic, just judging by Pep's comments, that Zach Steffen's going to be available, but we don't know. And if he's not, who are going to be the goalkeepers that will come in? I have a feeling Sean Johnson's going to be one of them because he's been on this list a number of times. Gregg's called him in. I have a feeling that Gabby Slonina is going to be on this list. He's gotten some early season starts with the Chicago Fire. He looks for all the world to be kind of that next great goalkeeper in line for the U.S. men's national team. He's a very young player, very skilled. And that third guy, I think, is Ethan Horvath. Ethan Horvath has just picked up a few starts in a row for Nottingham Forest at the perfect time for the U.S. men's national team. He seems to be kind of finding his form and getting into a groove. So if Gregg Berhalter needs him, I think he'll be available. We'll all remember those heroics that he had in that Mexico game in the final, in the championship final of the Nations League final. So he is available. He is an option. Even if it comes down to Sean Johnson or Ethan Horvath, I feel pretty confident about those goalkeepers. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that Zach Steffen will be available. At right back, and there's one name that's written in pen, it is Serginho Dest. We all know he's going to be there. The question is going to be who's going to be the other right back. In the last window, Gregg brought in Reggie Cannon and DeAndre Yedlin, which was really interesting. I don't know if he's going to do that again this window. As far as who's going to be the second guy, my guess right now would be Reggie Cannon, and I'm basing that strictly on the fact that Reggie Cannon got the start in the Canada game, whereas DeAndre Yedlin didn't. Well, maybe that has to do with that issue that DeAndre Yedlin had with travel time and getting to camp on time and all that. I don't know. There's not a lot that separates DeAndre Yedlin and Reggie Cannon at this point for me. DeAndre Yedlin just got that move back to Miami, to enter Miami. In MLS. He left Turkey. He is getting minutes over in MLS. At the same time, Reggie Cannon is getting minutes for Boa Vista. Now, I know the player that everybody wants to see, myself included, is Joe Scally. I don't think that Gregg's going to call in Joe Scally in this window. I'm disappointed with that. Now, Joe Scally hasn't been getting the same amount of minutes that he had been getting to Borussia Mönchengladbach to start the season. And there was that big report that came out that everybody freaked out about where Joe Scally said that he hadn't heard from Gregg Berhalter in a while or any member of U.S. soccer in a while, which leads me to believe that Joe Scally is not going to be a part of this camp. I'm still optimistic that should the U.S. qualify for the World Cup in this window, that Joe Scally is going to be a part of those plans leading up into the World Cup in like the 5 or 6 months that we have until the World Cup. And Joe Scally has every opportunity to make this team and make that plane. And let's jump into the left backs right now. Football might be over, but MLS is coming back, and Champions League and European soccer are in full full swing. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. Head over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive 50% off your welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use promo code BELIEVE to get started. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage, from sports right down to your favorite Vegas casino games. BetOnline is your #1 online wagering destination. BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports and play all your favorite games. BetOnline, where the game starts. The main left back is going to be Anthony Robinson. Anthony Robinson ate up all the minutes in the last World Cup qualifying window. He started all 3 games, and he had some really good games and he had some okay games. But I think he's the guy right now going into the last window. Now, who's going to be that second left back? It's a really interesting discussion right now because for a long time, Sam Vines was injured. George Bello was out of season with Atlanta United, but right now Sam Vines is back. He's playing. He's getting a lot of minutes at Antwerp, and he's not looking half bad, man. Maybe this window is the window where Gregg chooses to bring him back in. The left back that we have been seeing a lot of is George Bello. George Bello, of course, was famous for just not being great in that Panama game where nobody was great, and that's sort of the lasting impression that I have of him. He has been getting minutes, some scattered minutes for his new club, Arminia Bielefeld, and I probably didn't pronounce that right. I'll hear about it in the comments section, but doggone it, I took a swing. So he has been getting minutes there. He has been showing some exciting things in that left wing-back position. Not quite the position that we see Anthony Robinson playing. It's more of an advanced position with less defensive responsibilities, but still, you start to see that George Bello that everybody gets excited about, that George Bello who can find nice passes, make nice dribbles, and occasionally put in a nice cross from that left-back position. He hasn't really been starting games in Germany. He's been coming off the bench, but he's coming off the bench regularly. I think if I'm Gregg Berhalter in this spot, I would pick Sam Vines over George Bello, but it's not a hill that I'm looking to die on right now. If it ends up being Bello, okay. If it ends up being Vines, okay. I expect Anthony Robinson to eat up the bulk of the minutes in this World Cup qualifying window. Moving to center back, and I think that there's 4 guys that have sort of solidified themselves as Gregg's favorite center backs at this point, and that is Miles Robinson, Walker Zimmerman, Mark McKenzie, and Chris Richards. I expect all 4 of those guys to make the trip. Now, the big question, of course, in the center back position has been John Brooks. John Brooks has improved his form over for Wolfsburg. Now, the report came out that John Brooks will not be re-signed with Wolfsburg at the end of the season, so he will be looking for a new club. There's been a lot of rumors that maybe this is John's time to go to MLS, or maybe he still can find a team that's going to pay him a little bit of money over in Germany. It's unlikely that he's going to be making as much as he's making right now, and that seems to be the big dispute. All that being said, I still don't expect him to be a part of the U.S. men's national team in this window. It looks like whatever rift that Gregg has with John Brooks is likely to extend at least through World Cup qualifying. Maybe we see John with a chance for reconciliation after World Cup qualifying. Maybe he gets an opportunity further on down the road, but I don't expect him to be a part of this window. One player that I do expect to be a part of this window is Aaron Long. Aaron Long just made his return to New York Red Bulls. He actually scored a goal today. I watched that game right before taping this. He started in the first game and he started in the second game. He's actually playing, I believe, as a left center back in a 3-man back line. But we're seeing that Aaron Long that we saw prior to injury. We're seeing an Aaron Long that is athletic, can chase plays down, is dominant in the air. I did watch a bunch of his highlights in the first game that he had against San Jose, where he was up against Cade Cowell, and he was running down Cade Cowell on the channel. You know how fast Cade Cowell can be, so that just goes to show how athletic Aaron Long is. We know that Gregg Berhalter likes Aaron Long a lot. We know that he called him into some of these camps and the January camp, the December camp, just to be a part of the team, even though he was injured and not expected to take part in the actual games. That's how much Gregg likes to have him around. That's how much faith Gregg has in this player. So I do fully expect Gregg to bring Aaron Long in now that he's healthy. Whether or not he can actually get some game time in this window, that's yet to be seen, but I do expect to bring 5 center backs, and one of them being Aaron Long. Defensive mid is probably the easiest pick to make. It's very straightforward. It's going to be Tyler Adams and Kellen Acosta. the two guys that we've been seeing a lot of. The big question mark with the defensive midfielders is going to be that first game against Mexico with Tyler Adams, because Tyler Adams is sitting on a yellow card. And if you don't know just the long and the short of it coming into this World Cup qualifying window, the U.S. plays Mexico at Azteca in the first game, and then we play Panama in Orlando in the second game. I'm actually going to be at that game. And then the third game is going to be at Costa Rica. So those bookend games, the first game against Mexico and the last game against Costa Rica, are away against opposition that we've rarely picked up points in. And the U.S. absolutely needs to win that second game against Panama in order to solidify qualification to the World Cup. If we just win that game against Panama and we get a little help from our friends in some other games, the U.S. can qualify. But it's more than likely 4 points will definitely get us through. So the big question mark on everybody's mind is, do you play Tyler Adams in that first game, even though he's on a yellow, and risk not having Tyler Adams in that all-important second game against Panama? There's been a lot of interesting game theory going around, and I've kind of going back and forth as to my opinion on this. Personally, I think that you sit Tyler Adams and you play Kellyn Acosta. I felt like Kellyn Acosta has been effective enough, and I think that Panama game is just so important to the U.S.'s World Cup qualifying that I wouldn't risk not having Tyler Adams for that game. But either way, that's going to be an interesting discussion as we head into this World Cup qualifying window. But I fully expect both those players to be there, and I fully expect both those players to be getting minutes within World Cup qualifying in this window. Moving on to the attacking mids, and this is one of those position groups that's really scary, because throughout World Cup qualifying, probably the best player that the U.S. has had game in, game out has been Weston McKennie. I mean, he's been an absolute impact player, probably on and off the field for the U.S. throughout World Cup qualifying. Not having Wes there is going to be, it's scary, man. It's scary for every U.S. men's national team fan knowing Weston McKennie's not going to be a part of this group. He's just comes up so big in so many different places. So who is going to be the number 8 for the U.S. men's national team? I think we're all pretty sure that Yunus Musah is going to be one of those guys. I do think Luca De La Torre is going to be one of those guys, and I do think Gianluca Busio is going to be one of those guys. Now, beyond that, who's going to be that 4th 8? That's anybody's guess. I do think, I'll say this first of all, I'll get this out of the way. I do think that Gregg Berhalter, knowing that he can take more players than 23, knowing that he can take overage players, does tend to bring players that he doesn't think are actually going to play on the field but are locker room guys. I think he does that. And I know it makes the fans go crazy, but I do think that he does that. I think Mark McKenzie is one of those guys that he brings in that's a locker room guy that he doesn't expect to get many minutes. And I think Sebastian Leget's one of those guys. I think Sebastian Leget's going to be one of those number 8. Sebastian Leget just made the move to New England Revolution. I watched him play today. He looks pretty effective in that system that Bruce Arena plays over in New England. But whether or not he actually gets minutes, Sebastian Leget hasn't gotten a minute for the U.S. men's national team since, I believe, October. And I don't expect that to change anytime soon, even with all these injuries that are happening at the number 8 position. But who actually is going to play that number 8 position? There's a few interesting guys to talk about right now. The first one, I think, is Eric Williamson. Eric Williamson just came back from injury. The last time we saw Eric Williamson was whenever he played number 8 for the U.S. in the Gold Cup. He kind of started off a little rough in the Gold Cup, but by the end of the tournament was looking pretty effective. He does that thing that we really like from Luca De La Torre and we really like for Yunus Musah, where he can pick up the ball, run at the defense, get vertical, get upfield, and kind of put the back line under pressure. That's Eric Williamson. The other guy that I'm excited about is Paxton Pomykal. Now, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that I've mentioned the name Paxton Pomykal on a number of occasions. Paxton Pomykal is famous for having an absolutely tremendous game against France in the U20 World Cup. He had a tremendous U20 World Cup. He was a player that all the pundits expected to just go on and have this massive career after this World Cup, but he's been derailed largely because of injury. Well, this year he's playing, he's back to full health, and he's back to playing midfield for FC Dallas, and in the first 2 games, you've seen a lot of exciting things from Paxton Pomykal, but I think the most exciting thing, the thing that leads me to believe that he might be in Gregg's plans in this particular window, is that the head coach of FC Dallas is Nico Estevez. Nico Estevez was the assistant coach under Gregg Berhalter. He just took the job at FC Dallas. Nico Estevez, his claim to fame is that he's actually the coach that kind of first made contact with Yunus Musah while he was at Valencia. But anyway, that put that over there. Nico Estevez runs a system at FC Dallas that is very, very similar to the system that Gregg Berhalter runs. And I know that Nico Estevez has Gregg's ear. So if Nico's on the phone with Gregg and Gregg's saying, Nico, I need a number 8. What do you think? And he says, you know, Greggy B, you know, Triple G, we got this guy, Paxton Pomykal. He's running that exact same system that you're running with the national team. He's running it really well. I think this guy could come in and slot in right away for you. I think that would carry a lot of weight. So I do think, even though we've seen over and over again that Gregg doesn't like taking guys off the street and bringing them into games right away, it tends to be a slow process for Gregg to kind of build trust and see that player understands the system before he actually gives them meaningful minutes with the national team. I think Paxton Pomykal might be able to jump the line. He might be a little bit of an exception to this rule just because the system that he's playing with his club team is very similar to the one that Gregg Berhalter employs with the national team. So that is something that I'm kind of looking out for. And the third guy, the dark horse, is Timothy Tillman. Timothy Tillman's a player that we used to hear a lot about whenever he was a youth player, but recently he's a player with Gerda Firth. He's a teammate with Julian Green, and he is playing in a number 8 now. Early in his career, he was a bit more advanced. He's a bit more of an attacker, but right now he's playing a bit more of an 8. And there's been a lot of positive reviews about Timothy Tillman. He's a tidy player, and a lot of the U.S. men's national team scouts out there are really liking what they see from this guy. I don't know that he kind of comes in this moment and becomes a figure, but I just want to kind of throw out Timothy Tillman's name as one maybe to watch, maybe after World Cup qualifying, that could potentially kind of come and crash this roster. But I just want to put that out there for you. Timothy Tillman, take that with you. Now, the wingers, I think, are fairly straightforward. I think it's going to be Pulisic, Aronson, Weah, and I think it's going to be Jordan Morris. I think that Gregg prefers Jordan Morris over Paul Arriola. At least he did in that last window. And if he liked Morris more than Arriola whenever Morris was sort of coming back into form, recovering from that injury, he'll like him even more now that Morris is going to have a few weeks of MLS under his belt and should be a little bit more informed. So I do expect that Morris will be that guy. Christian Pulisic, it's worth saying, that seems to have really returned to form for Chelsea and is playing really, really well. He's running at guys again, but he's also linking up play really well. He just had a magnificent left-footed cross in his last game. He's scoring goals, he's creating assists, he's creating danger. He's kind of returned to that guy. We'll see if he can finally be that guy that the U.S. needs him to be in this all-important final window. I think a lot's riding on Christian Pulisic's play. We've been saying throughout World Cup qualifying that we don't need Christian to be a hero in order to win games. Well, you know, it's crunch time, and in crunch time, you kind of lean on your heroes, and Christian Pulisic's been playing like a hero for Chelsea, so if he can do that in Azteca, if he can do that in Orlando, that would go a long way towards qualifying for the U.S. men's national team. He's the type of player that can win a game by himself, and I'd love to see him do that in World Cup qualifying. Even though, to be fair, even though we've been criticizing Christian Pulisic a lot for his play for the U.S., he has managed to score goals and rack up numbers in World Cup qualifying, even though it hasn't been the best Christian Pulisic. I think that just speaks to how highly we see that player. Outside of that, the big question mark is going to be Gio Reyna. It is optimistic regarding Gio Reyna. There is a report that says Gio Reyna is expected to return to the field for Borussia Dortmund soon. That initial reading said 2 weeks, and we're kind of getting close to that 2-week mark. So we could potentially see Gio Reyna come back. I think Gio Reyna is the type of player where he is so damn talented. He is such a game breaker that even if we just have 15 minutes of Gio Reyna, he's worth bringing on the plane, getting to World Cup qualifying for those 15 minutes. His 15 minutes can absolutely change a game. He can score a goal. He can break open a defense. He is that good. He is an absolute world beater. So it's looking like we're going to get Gio Reyna. Whether or not Gio Reyna is a 90-minute player for World Cup qualifying will be a question mark. But just having that in your tool belt, if you're Gregg Berhalter, just having that player you can bring off the bench and change a game is just massive. Last but certainly not least, we have the striker position, and I think if you would look at any of these prediction videos for the striker position at any point during World Cup qualifying or even before that, they would all start the same way, and that's that, man, we are waiting for a striker to kind of step up and take over and be the guy. Who is going to be the 3 strikers? We've seen Gregg take 3 strikers over World Cup qualifying, so I think number 1, I'm pretty confident that Jesus Ferreira is going to be one of those guys. Jesus Ferreira has just been an absolute absolutely effective player for the U.S. men's national team every time he's been on the pitch. If you look back at Jesus Ferreira's minutes, there's a number of moments that you kind of forget about where Jesus has like set up players. I mean, there was that moment against Mexico where he set up Weston McKennie for that goal. There was that moment in, I believe, the Honduras game where he set up Yunus Musa. I mean, there was that moment. Was it against Honduras or was it El Salvador where he set up that goal where he headed it back across goal for Anthony Robinson? In Jesus Ferreira's game, there's so many little deft moments and little nice little touches where he puts the ball in the correct spot for a player to do what they can do. And if that player is Christian Pulisic, if it's Gio Reyna, if it's Tim Weah, it's players that can put the ball in the back of the net. You're going to have... it's going to be really effective. Now, the big question about Jesus Ferreira is going to be, can he score goals? We saw in that game against El Salvador where he missed that huge opportunity. I'm not a fan of just like hammering a player for missing a big opportunity because, players miss opportunities all the time. Though I will say I watched FC Dallas today against the New England Revolution, and he had another opportunity in the box where he skied it over the crossbar. I think Jesus Ferreira is a type of player where if he can start scoring goals, if he can put together like a 15-goal season, he's the type of player that can just be absolutely massive. I think he could play for a lot of massive teams around the world. Just his ability on the ball combined with the ability to score goals, setting up others, pressuring on defense, plus the ability to score goals, he'll be... name your price. It's just about scoring goals for him. Now, scoring goals, that can be said for a lot of players, and one of them is his former teammate, Ricardo Pepi. Ricardo Pepi was the guy. He was the player. We all staked our flag in the ground, and we said, we found him. Our striker problems are over. Ricardo Pepi is here, and he is saving us all. And then he stopped scoring, and then he stopped kind of getting chances, and he hasn't been getting a ton of minutes. I was actually looking at the scouting website for Ricardo Pepi's last shots on goal, and it took me back to FC Dallas. That kind of goes to show how many opportunities he's been getting with Augsburg, but he's a striker that's out of form right now. I do think that he's a tremendous player. I do think he has a tremendous amount of upside. I do think that he deserves to be one of the strikers in this group in World Cup qualifying, but I do think it should be said that I don't expect him to be like the guy throughout World Cup qualifying, even though he's super talented. Now, for that third spot is going to be really interesting because there's a guy that a lot of people want to see in this third spot in Jordan Pefok. We talk about strikers not scoring goals, where Jordan Pefok is scoring goals. He's the one American striker that is scoring goals, and if you watch his goals, they are very similar in nature. They're goals that are created whenever somebody's crossing the ball into the box and he's getting on either a head on the end of it or he's striking it, or he's just a player that scores goals in the box, which is a tremendous thing. Goals are the most important thing in soccer. They're the hardest thing to do in soccer. That being said, Gregg has already come out and said that he doesn't prefer Jordan Pefok, that he's not dynamic enough, that he doesn't press enough, that he's not great with the ball at his feet. And all those things are true. To be fair, all those things are true about Jordan Pefok. But he does score goals. I don't expect Gregg to turn back on that. I think Gregg will stick to his guns on that. And I think it's really going to come down to two guys. The first one is Gyasi Zardes. I don't think it's going to be Gyasi Zardes. To start the season for the Columbus Crew, Gyasi Zardes hasn't started either of his first two goals. It's been Miguel Berry, who's a player that a lot of people are talking about for maybe a dark horse call-up for the U.S. men's national team. Either way, I don't think it's going to be Gyasi Zardes. He hasn't been starting games. Who I do think it's going to be is Josh Sargent. Welcome home to the prodigal son, Josh Sargent, the player that, boy, we have kind of ridden the roller coaster for over at Norwich City with Josh Sargent. Now, why do I think it's going to be Josh Sargent? Number one, Gregg Berhalter went to his game against Liverpool recently in the Premier League. And if history has shown us anything, it's that if Gregg Berhalter goes to your game, you tend to be called up to the national team. So I do think that Josh Sargent could be the guy. The other thing is, I watch all of Norwich's games, and over the past few months, I haven't been predicting that Josh Sargent would get called up in the national team because I just didn't think that in the final third he looked like a player that was ever going to threaten or ever going to score. That being said, ever since he had his kid and ever since he came up with that game with 2 goals, he's looked like a different player. I'm not saying he's looked like the player that he did as a youth player, where he looked like every game he was going to score a brace. I'm saying he looks a little bit more threatening, a little bit more attacking, and of course you're always going to get that effort from Josh. You're always going to get that defense. You're always going to get that player who can hold the ball up a little bit and kind of do some things in the attacking third with the ball at his feet. So I do think in this last window we're going to see Josh Sargent, Ricardo Pepi, and Jesus Ferreira. Now that's not the end of the striker news. There was a report that came out of I don't know how much faith you can put into this particular website because I haven't seen much movement out of it after this, but there was a report that Folarin Balogun was looking at signing his one-time switch papers to become a full-time U.S. men's national team player. That might be very interesting. Balogun is an exciting young player and has just as much opportunity as any of the players in our striker pool right now that we've discussed previously to potentially kind of reach up and seize and grab this U.S. men's national team striker position. He's a player that could be a potential dark horse for the World Cup, you know, if the chips kind of fall his way. He, as much as anybody else. I'm just saying that because who else out there has really grabbed and seized a hold of this particular position? So I think it's a really interesting movement. Now, I haven't heard anything else since this report. This report came from a Twitter account that doesn't have a tremendous amount of followers. It came from and all the subsequent reports that I've seen have cited that initial report as the evidence for this. So until we see those papers actually get signed, I don't know. But it's just something interesting to talk about as of right now. So that's my prediction for Gregg Berhalter's roster coming into this last round of World Cup qualifiers. I'm curious if I left any players out or I selected some players that you disagree with. What do you think about that striker position? How confident are you for the U.S. men's national team qualifying in this round? Man, I know I'm a little bit nervous. I got a little bit of the anxiety going, but I kind of always have that going. But boy, if we could qualify in that game in Orlando that I'm actually going to be at, that would be absolutely tremendous. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know how you think in the comment section. Si puede hablar español, dígame un comentario en español. Remember, if you want these videos in podcast form, I do post all of them on the podcast on the Believe Network, so you can download that anywhere that podcasts are sold on the Yank Report podcast. If you really want to support the channel, you can become a member. You get access to some members-only videos. You get a cool badge to kind of show how long you've been a member. You get to see the videos a few hours before they actually go live, so you can get all your comments in before everybody else does. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Sam, and this is the Yank Report brought to you by Bet Online.